Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the Adverse Childhood Experiences deck. These cards were developed over quite a long period of time with practitioners from different sectors, different professions, different backgrounds. They were all taking part in the REACH training, the routine inquiry about adversity in childhood training that we provide. And a lot of the ideas that people came up with during some of the exercises talked about life dealing you a hand of cards. You know, sometimes life deals you a hand of cards. You can't control where you're born, where you grow up, the family you grow up in. And you have to kind of play the best hand you can with the cards that you got. So that metaphor was what got us started. And it's quite a nice metaphor, and it kind of resonated with me. So we decided we'd develop some cards, an assessment deck, that would help people, practitioners and workers have conversations with people that they're helping about childhood adversity, its impacts, about the counterbalancing effects of resilience, and about how people can move towards their hopes and dreams. So there's 100 cards in the deck. They're beautifully illustrated by my colleague John Dorset. They come with full instructions, a little bit about the background and the research, the case for asking people about adversity, a little bit about the science of resilience, how we develop the cards, how to use them, and some guidance notes. Put those to one side. So as you can see, there are 5 different suits in this deck. First set of cards, the adverse childhood experiences. So there are the usual 10 that you find from the original Felitti and Anders study, but we've also looked through the research and found other adversities, sources of significant stress that are known to impact people's life, their health and their well-being. So when you're working with someone, the idea is that people can take a look at these cards, they can pick out the experiences that they've had, and that might be something they're willing to share with you. So they can turn those cards over and they can say, well, you know, I've experienced physical abuse or threats from a romantic partner, I've experienced bullying, harassment or cyberbullying, and there are a couple of other things that I've not found in the deck, but they're actually things I quite like to talk about. And then the person you're working with could share with you the impacts of those experiences. So again, there's a question mark card, which is anything else that's not covered by the deck. Self-harming, for example, self-blame, the impacts of adversity for that person might be problems in education or work. So again, they can show you what they've been through, or they can just leave them turned over and show you that they've had 4 things that have impacted them, 4 areas of impact. They've had 3 adversities or sources of traumatic stress in their life. And then we move on to look at the sources of resilience, because we always talk about the balancing effect of adversity, stress, trauma and tragedy on one side of the scales, and resilience, coping, social support, acts of well-being, strategies and ways of coping on the other side of the scales. And actually, if we have enough resilience assets on this side of the scales tip in favour of us coping despite what's happened to us. So again, these come from the research looking at the resilience factors that are shown to be protective for people who've experienced adversity in childhood. So again, there's a question mark card that covers things that maybe not covered in the deck. Feeling safe and protected by an adult at home, for example. Having adults other than your parents or carers who are supportive and interested in your well-being, maybe a teacher or coach. And having supportive friends, for example. So the person you're working with could say, yeah, I had those things in my childhood, or I've got those things in my childhood, and they're really helpful and supportive. And then they can look through these cards which represent resilience factors that we know are helpful across the life course. And these might be things that they've already got or things that they would like to acquire. And again, things that we know are really, really important in protecting us from the impacts of adversity are things like having some financial security, social support or feeling connected to a community or group, having a supportive family, for example, having hope for the future. And the person might also look at these cards and go, well, you know what, there are 5 or 6 things in this deck that I haven't got that I'd really quite like to have in my life. So they could put those to one side, and that could be another conversation to have at another time about areas that they want to develop. And finally, you've got the hopes and dreams cards, which people can write on, and they can put down where they want to get to, what they're interested in, and what their aspirations for the future might be. This process might take a session, it might take 2, 3 or 4 sessions. We recommend you go at the pace of the individual, you don't try and rush it. And actually, for a lot of people, disclosing adverse childhood experiences in and of itself is a huge act, a huge act of trust. And also, the practitioner then might need to pay a really significant amount of time looking at whether that person's still experiencing those things, whether they've told anyone before, if they need any help, if they've had help, whether that's been useful, or what the right course of action might be for that person. So this is the process. You can see it goes from left to right. What happened to me? What's the impact been in my life? What are some of the things that might have been protective and supportive in childhood? What are some of the things that might be protective or supportive in other stages of life, or things that I might want to acquire, other resilience factors that I might not have in my life but might be quite useful, and then my hopes and dreams. So this is in a nutshell, this is the very short version, but this is the kind of format for using the cards. And actually, this is just a suggestion. You might also find other ways that you want to use the cards. You might find other methods that you think are better. You might just want to look at the resilience cards. We've had services that have used resilience cards as a conversation starter with young people or with a group of adults trying to recover or heal from a particular kind of trauma. We've had people, start with hopes and dreams, because that's, where do you want to be if things were different? We've had people who focus very much on, what are the problems you're experiencing right now. We're not ready to talk about adversity or trauma, but I am ready to talk about my mental health issues or my sleep difficulties or physical health problems. Some of the things that are the consequences of past stress or trauma. And this whole conversation about adversity, about past trauma is, potentially a life-changing conversation if it's handled well, which is kind of why we create the cards in the first place, to kind of make it a bit easier for practitioners and their clients, the people they're trying to help, whether it's in education or in mental health services or in any other sector. We just wanted to make it a bit easier to have this conversation, which is a really important one in terms of the process of recovering from trauma or past childhood adversity. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Please get in touch if you've got any other questions. We really want to hear from people if they've got any ideas about how to use these cards in a different way. You can get in touch with us. You can find us on the internet. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.